Yeah, we're going to start anyway because this is a very relaxed, casual last session before we have our afternoon break. So, does anyone know this person? If you know him, put your hand up. For the rest of you, welcome. We're going to run an Unpanel session. We're going to have some volunteers from the audience to join us, but it's also going to be interactive. So myself and James, this is James Governor, by the way, are going to walk around and have microphones for any questions. And then James is going to run the panel and be James, be Munchips.
Dear, oh dear. So yeah, I think that knowing that I tend to do things in unstructured fashion made this as unstructured as it could possibly be. So this is an Unpanel. I'm not really sure how this is going to work out. So yeah, I'm James. I'm Monkchips on Twitter. But you don't want to follow me because I'm really noisy. But nice to meet you all. So the theme of the panel was going to be kind of the journey to serverless, or getting started with serverless, and how individuals and organizations were finding that journey. And I think maybe a good place to start, given that we don't have any panelists. I'm interested in the diversity scholars, and whether any of the diversity scholars feel that they've already begun the journey, or whether this is the journey. So, do any of the diversity scholars feel they might like to talk about the journey to serverless? Any of you? Anyone? Diversity scholars? Or is that just really making you nervous? Okay, I'm not going to volunteer anyone, but I was hopeful. But actually, maybe I will volunteer someone. Yeah, no, that's a bit unfair. So, sorry? Planning to, interested in, why are you here? Someone that's just comfortable in just kind of getting up about why they feel they'd sort of come, why did they want to be part of the program? I've got a feeling you might be volunteering. Oh no, look what you did, come on up. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna, and I'm a Python web developer. I do mostly Django, so I do a very different approach to deploying applications and how we structure the architecture of the system.
Well, this is Anna, so big round of applause. Would you like to take a seat? I thought, is Lorna still around? Because I felt that Lorna's sort of presentation this morning was really good on kind of getting started. Is Lorna Jane still here? Are you?
We found her.
Great. Would you care to join us, Helena?
Yes.
Okay. Helena.
Yeah, I come here because I'm trying to because I have this concept launched about a year ago, about this my own concept about serverless, if you like, and about bringing AI like the way it should be instead of how everyone is running around doing it. And so when I have a chance to come here, I thought let me find out because now I have a more practical concept. And that involves using some of the stuff that is being taught here. So coming here, I already learned one thing, which is a relief to me, is that I kind of like jumped from here, went over there, and actually I was quite surprised. It's actually more practical to be over there just now, not because I have any criticism over here. I kind of realized that actually I thought I was pretty useless in serverless, but actually I gone past all of that, and I actually was very appropriate over there. So I learned something very quick, and I was relieved about that, because the things I learned that is really useful, which I already decided that is actually people are so obsessed with programming language. And there's so much thing that is going on so fast. And why are people so obsessed with so many things? And then they got such a show off when it comes to AI and things like that. In fact, the AI that could do now is actually so tiny with the things that could happen. And as a startup, I need to think about a bit more long term about the things I'm going to build. Not just like today I can get it and then tomorrow I could be gone. I need to think a bit, think the original idea about AI. So when over there they told me about the things that I should really be focusing on is that not about programming language, not about this, that, and others, but basically just recruiting people who can just be willing to learn. And this distributed concept, which is kind of what I was agreeing on. So, and it gave me hope that what I'm doing, that everyone think is crazy, is not that crazy.
Well, thank you very much, Helena. So one of the things about open spaces is normally have someone give a summary at the end. We didn't have that, but see what I did with my panel. There you go. I think any good tech panel has a token male, token man. So I don't know if we can get a volunteer, somebody that's like either made the journey as an organization or as an individual to using serverless, or perhaps would like to join us and talk about that. I know that there are people here, I'm happy to volunteer, but it'd be great if perhaps someone wanted to jump in. Thank you, sir. Very good. Okay, I think we've got a quorum on the panel, if you'd like to join us. And, oh, okay, well, that's good. I'm going to be able to sit down too. This is great. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Rob. Hi, my name's Rob. I'm a contributor to OpenWhisk, the open source project, and I build APIs. And I'm mostly in PHP, so not the Python people, I'm the PHP one.
Right. Have they given us enough mics? This is going to be a little bit great. Okay. So I guess the first question would be, let's start with Rob. You mentioned OpenWhisk. Are you an IBMer by any chance?
I am not an... Is this on? Yes? Yes, it is now. I am not an IBMer at all.
Amazing. So we've identified an OpenWhisk person that's not an IBMer. And let me tell you, that's quite a surprise in this serverless ecosystem. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the demonstrations have been about Amazon Lambda. So Rob, would you like to say a little about, in terms of getting started as a journey, how did you end up not choosing Lambda as your journey?
I'm an open source person. OpenWhisk is open source. That made it way more interesting. I didn't know about serverless framework at all because I'm not a JavaScript person, so it didn't look interesting. Oh, that's better. So I'm interested in Swift. OpenWhisk was Swift. That was a key driver. OpenWhisk is also multi-vendor. That was also a key driver because I worry about lock-in. And that seemed like an easy way to solve that problem. I had multiple people run in commercial OpenWhisk environments. And it's open source like a little source code. I like that a lot.
So for you, open source is one of the most important things in technology choices?
Yeah, I think so. Particularly for fundamental stuff, because this stuff's commodity to a certain level. So it's not my code. I would rather other people contribute to it. It's visible. I think it's generally better for our ecosystem.
Okay. So, Lorna Jane, you may have some opinions on this. You are an IBMer. You're involved in OpenWhisk in terms of advocacy. What are you hearing from the organizations and individuals that you're working with about the importance of openness as opposed to perhaps some of the other options that are out there?
I'm not really supposed to be involved with OpenWhisk for advocacy. I'm supposed to advocate for other things. I just find OpenWhisk interesting. And so, I mean, it's part of our ecosystem, right? So I'm wiring a bunch of things together. I think I do hear that concern about people not wanting to be locked in. So normally it comes as, well, I might want to deploy to Lambda, or if I choose OpenWhisk, what if we change our mind? What if it's really expensive after the trial? So people have those kinds of anxieties. But I think the thing I always say is that because we have the open source offering as a hosted option on Bluemix, and I have a Do What You Like account, so most of my stuff is there, although I do use Lambda as well. You can run it in a dev platform, which is something which I feel is hugely missing from a bunch of the cloud offerings. You can end up having to like basically pay for your platform twice to have everything, to have a second platform you can dev on. And I think having open source offerings means your MySQL is going to be like MySQL and your OpenWhisk is going to be like OpenWhisk. And I like that, and I think it strikes a chord. I work mostly in the open source space, so my background is sort of LAMP stack, and I think it resonates particularly with those communities.
Helena, I believe you said you were doing a startup. Is that?
Yeah.
Do these concerns about perhaps runaway costs in future concern you in terms of the decisions you might make in adopting a serverless platform?
Well, I mean, when I first come up with this particular idea, which I couldn't say anymore because I knew there are people who I already knew that I met along the way in the space of 1 year who is actually constantly monitoring and copying my idea. So I'm not going to say exactly what I'm going to launch in the end. So, but however, I did feel just about 3 months ago that I needed to use those commercial platform, and on top of that, I use like Amazon, Azure, and just like bits of different, the best of everything, optimize it, and then maybe the bits that I really need, I then build it myself separately. And then I'm not going to say how I'm going to use it, but I got a particular idea, and I came here to try to figure out whether it's possible or not, because a lot of people say to me that it's crazy. But I realized in a short space, since I've been here, since this morning, that it's not impossible.
So, slightly different question, but we'll go to Anna. In terms of perhaps your journey, you've got a language that you are particularly interested in using. When you looked around, did you see that there were, or I mean, perhaps it's even earlier in the journey, but how important is the support for Python in these environments, and does that, obviously I suppose that's going to be somewhat of a deal breaker for you?
It is, but as long as I am aware, AWS Lambda supports Python 2 and 3, which is nice, but I would say from the Python community's perspective, and especially trying to convince beginners to get started with Python, it's a good idea to have enough infrastructure. So if somebody is interested specifically in the web, yes, they would like to know what services they have available that they can use. And yeah.
And what sorts of applications are you interested in using serverless for?
Oh, currently I definitely, if I were to do a serverless application for myself as a tutorial or as a training just for myself, I would do something that was mentioned at the very beginning, how serverless was used. So simply for converting from a format to a different one, or generating PDFs or anything that kind of simple. So I was thinking I want to do some simple image manipulation. So that'd be very simple to have a static website and then just have an endpoint that you can reach out that would just convert the image and spit out the result.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting what Lorna said about sort of image resizing as being the new hello world in serverless. Every serverless conference I've been to, that's the recurring demo. I mean, it was nice to have guys' demos which were not about that, because that's so much what we see. So if we go to Rob, maybe, if we can. Yeah, so probably the same question. You are, you've got a language bias. You are interested in finding very much an open source platform. What sorts of applications are you interested in building, and what are your hopes for where you might go in terms of the serverless journey?
Right, so I'm self-employed and I'm an API person, and I think long term pretty much all APIs are going to end up serverless because of the business model. The fact that I'm paying for this code when I use it is massive to me. The lack of having to do personal operations, personal DevOps stuff, that's also important. I'm not keen on managing my own scaling solutions. I don't want to learn that. I don't get paid to learn that. So having a solution that I can give to clients auto scales that gets charged for when it's in use is absolutely massive going forward. I think this will be really, really important for APIs in particular. Anything where you're hitting an HTTP endpoint, serverless type structures work really, really well.
And I'm quite interested in, I'm about to say I'm quite interested in documentation, which is a bit of a, I'm James, I like documentation. How have you found the docs? And I suppose for you specifically, you were going to go with OpenWhisk anyway, but in terms of the journey and learning, are you getting what you need from the OpenWhisk documentation?
Yeah, the docs aren't bad. The OpenWhisk open source docs are some of the better ones I've found, and they're actually in the repo with the actual source code, which means that when the contributors to OpenWhisk update the way the source code works, they update the documentation at the same time. It's lovely. It's also quite easy to find. So I've tried to find some of the, say, the Bluemix documentation for OpenWhisk, and it's not as discoverable as the documentation for the OpenWhisk project itself.
Good, we could dogpile.
Which is quite
I think we should get Lorna Jade to comment on the, how do you find the IBM docs?
I find they're great because I work with the teams that write them, so I obviously have to fix stuff as I go along. If I have to ask, then I fix it. But I find I get excellent tech support because, like you say, we have a bunch of OpenWhisk contributors inside the company. So that's cheating, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I was being a bit unfair. Anna, I'm quite interested then in, in terms of your previous answer, it sounds like you're kind of gravitating towards Lambda. How are the docs in terms of looking at Python support and Lambda and the journey there? And if you could say a bit about what, just basically how you're finding in terms of your learning the environment.
I have no idea. I came to this conference knowing zero information about what serverless is.
Okay, cool. That's great.
I can speak to both sets of docs. I think the Lambda docs are good. Setting up on Lambda, and I find my cycle time is longer on Lambda. There's just more moving parts. I could probably make the argument that it's more powerful and more flexible and there's more stuff, but that's not really what I need to ship my little apps and API endpoints and things. So I have found that OpenWhisk stuff a faster start and a faster iteration time. Both communities have really good wider ecosystems. So there are lots of really good individuals blogging, tutorials, blog posts, active Medium channels and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good indicator of the health of those technologies. I've been really impressed.
Well, slightly different question than Anna. Do you feel sort of comfortable at this point in the day thinking this actually might be something you'd find out more about? I mean, it'd be difficult to go, no, this conference was terrible, but do you feel the sort of the learning curves that you've seen indicate this as a technology that you might move forward with?
For my personal projects, yes. I wouldn't vouch for a company that I would be working for to try to convince them to use AWS, Lambda, or IBM OpenWhisk. Sorry. But I think because of the intro and because it took about half an hour, 40 minutes to get up and running, and it essentially, because the infrastructure itself is so small, because it's a function as a service, it feels like it's so much faster to get started rather than try to teach someone how to set up a whole platform just to do one simple thing.
And so, Helena.
Helen, actually.
Sorry?
Helen.
Helen,
Yeah.
sorry, I misunderstood at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, Helen, in terms of this secret startup, you're not going to tell us what you're doing, and that's fine. I'm quite interested then if you're saying, well, we might actually build something on top of serverless. Again, looking at the sort of the journey there and the ability, through the documentation, obviously through the website, through the onboarding and so on. What are the best experiences? Are there any particular things where you've been like, this is something I was expecting to find harder and I found easier than expected? And sort of just in terms of the journey, going from saying I was going to be in the beginner's room but actually needed to be over there, what helped you make that journey? What were the best resources for you to learn about serverless technology?
I guess was the kind of acknowledgement by the people over there to sort of confirm my own conclusion that well, sooner or later, I'm going to need to hire people. And what kind of people would I be hiring? Would I be hiring all these people who are crazy about all kind of programming language that they could not even, begin to sit down and just sort of, say, oh, wow, all kind of things that say they're so negative. And I realized from the guy who was leading his own startup, he told us that about his experience, and then this Amazon guy about how to recruit people, and then about how to look at it, and the metaphor that you need to have in your head to do with this sort of work. It's kind of really helped me, because I also come to that same conclusion. But then, sometimes when you are alone by yourself, you kind of think, oh, wow, am I really crazy, or what, or are all these people who are criticizing me, are they right or what? So I suppose that's really helpful to know, and also to hear what you said about this OpenWhisk, which also OpenWhisk.
OpenWhisk.
Yeah.
Like the
It's
kitchen
something-
utensil.
Open whiskey. That sounds like an event that you have you not
We should
done
do that
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like really helpful to know that instead of making the mistake and whatever, because I kind of almost guess that I need something like that in order to be able to do like this, like that, like that. So it's like coming here is really great, because it's kind of like really like putting me as a duck sort of on the water that is like just there, and it sort of confirmed it. So that means that I just do what I feel is right. And to know this is really helpful, because it means that now I don't need to do what a lot of people are telling me, go to Lambdas or what, no, because it doesn't suit me. I already look at it and I didn't feel it feel right for me,
Okay. So, I guess let's get back to Rob. We had you're an independent contractor, you say. I'm quite interested in you say you're doing work for clients and you can make an open choice, but very often customers are not necessarily interested in them. They talk about they want openness, but then they will adopt the solution that they feel offers them the most comfort in terms of investment protection. Are you finding that in your conversations with people that you're building solutions for, do they just not care about that, or do you sometimes get a bit of pushback, like why are you using this technology that's not the industry standard?
So as a general rule, clients genuinely don't care. You can solve the problem with a bit of string if it solves their problem. Essentially, I charge a lot of money to solve their problem. I don't charge money to provide a particular solution. Nobody cares that I write it in PHP or write it in Swift, for instance.
Could you say a bit more about what sorts of clients and projects you're working on? I'm not asking for specific organizations if you don't want to share that.
So I'm mostly business-to-business type work. Insurance companies, charities, people like that is the sort of work I do. Mostly dealing with legacy backend systems and modernizing them, or providing modern access to legacy data stores. Things like that is what I tend to do. Like the next serverless project that will probably go live is taking a industry standard email format and converting it into a legacy email format, because that's what the internal systems can view. It's the sort of stuff I do. So yeah, it's a lot of batch processing, and it's a lot of data access and putting it into APIs.
At some point, I want to see your conference talk about the solution you built with String, because that
would be awesome.
That would be a good one. So yeah, Lorna Jane, I'm quite interested then. So as you say, for you, OpenWhisk is just interesting because it's there. You've got the sandbox. It's available. If you're going to try and show off integrations, it's something that you might do more with. In terms of that as a journey, I mean, can you see yourself gravitating to become more of an OpenWhisk person and less of just I'm the lamp stack person?
Yeah, definitely. I'm an advocate, so I work with all of the tech all of the time. I don't want to narrow my options down at all. But OpenWhisk has been, so far, a really good experience. Obviously, you've seen the demo with Alexa, so she's now not plugged in, so I can say her name, which is nice. And little things like that, little bits of Internet of Things, little bits of data processing, plugging it into some of the IBM APIs. We have some speech analysis and whatever. So all of those things are quite fun, and it's been nice for those, you know, the tiny toy projects that are small enough they fit in a conference talk. But I also build real tools. I build some internal tools. I do quite a lot of support in my role. I write quite a lot of code. So I am building bigger systems. I am using it to process real data for real internal use cases and metrics and stuff. And I'm enjoying it. I don't want to rule out the other opportunities. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you probably will always want to run a server for. But I think for a lot of what we do, we will see more of all kinds of serverless implementations. And I am very happy about that.
So one of the things that we see at my company, we do research into understanding adoption of technology. And we live in an era where you need less and less permission to do things. And particularly, I think, with serverless, where you don't have to, you literally don't need to pay until there is a transaction happening, until there's an engagement with the end user. It's an appealing model, and it enables that sort of, you know, we've seen shadow IT, but, you know, in our firm we call developers the new kingmakers. They aren't necessarily the end chain of decision making, but certainly in terms of initial adoption, they play a really significant role. So I think, Anna, that in terms of your answer before, I was really intrigued in whether your organization is allowing you to make choices. Can you see, you know, you sort of said I would use it in personal projects, but going forward, perhaps you could be an exponent within the company. Do you have the freedom to do that, or is it really probably just going to be a personal interest?
That's a very interesting question. Because I'm currently shifting from one role to the other. So for the current role, I don't have the choice. And there's a very specific reason why I don't have the choice for that, because as a freelance web developer, I work for a company that provides services for a company called Google, and Google prefers to use Google App Engine rather than something else. And as far as I'm aware, Google App Engine currently doesn't offer serverless. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, we had Google Cloud Functions is in beta, but it's a separate stream. Sorry? Yeah, well, that's part of their problem. You know, the enterprises, for all the fact that developers are allowed to make choices, organizations would prefer those weren't beta choices. So this is a problem for Google to solve. We've certainly been encouraging them to get on with it.
Yeah, on top of that, so it's really nice to know that Google has Google Cloud Functions, which is in beta, and it has Google Compute. We are allowed to use runtime environments, which is not the Google Compute Cloud, but it's something different. So also stuck with Python 2.7. I'm always complaining and ranting about this. But to the role that I will be moving on, I've learned about some of the things about the architecture, and I think serverless might be an option for a specific set of problems that it tries to solve. So that's a generic question actually to everyone else. I think I'm better at asking questions rather than answering them. What about hybrid architectures where you would have microservices and you would have serverless for something and for something else you can have completely different? Is that an option that somebody is exploring or implementing?
Great question, and I'm aware that I haven't actually asked the audience anything, and I'm supposed to be bringing you in, so I've been failing on that. I think we're running out of time. Ant's looking a bit stressed, but I reckon it's an extremely good question. I mean, one of the examples that we've seen, for example, is in DevOps, where you're using serverless to support DevOps functions. Is there anyone here that is out there thinking, I want to talk about my hybrid infrastructure where they're using, here we go.
Hi, my name is Miguel. I work for Truva. It's a British startup. I think an hybrid solution is not, maybe there's people in companies that they are like really strong about their opinions on going for a specific solution, but like the natural course of a company is probably to end up with an hybrid solution. It's not like something that you plan from the beginning. It's the natural course of the teams. I mean, you cannot, if you're dealing, for example, with payments, I mean, you're not going to break the service right away. You're probably going to like start migrating other parts of your like current APIs. You're probably going to develop new features with these new like newborn technologies, but you'll always have an hybrid solution. I don't think it's even realistic if you think you're going to have just one thing forever. Like, yeah, it's something very dynamic.
There you go. And I think that's probably a pretty good place to wrap up. I'd really like to thank our panelists in this Unpanel. So Anna, Helen, Lorna Jane, and Rob. It's easy for me to stand up here and ramble, but I think they were all really brave. And another round of applause, please.